Welcome to the introduction of Emotional Resilience, Living with the Fruit of the Spirit. I'm your host, Ron Ovitt, and the author of this program. Each week you'll get a video overview of the lesson. The video will give you the highlights of the materials that we're going to cover. You'll also get the fuller manuscript that goes into more detail and has exercises and questions to help you apply the material to your life. Finally, there's an audio of the class. In the audio, I will introduce stories and illustrations that will help you understand the materials even better. Repetition is the key to solid learning, so I encourage you to do all three. When you do all three, you'll begin to understand the material and be better equipped to apply it to your life. Now, some of you may be doing this in a group or with a friend. In that case, we encourage you to come prepared to the group meeting by listening to the audio and answering the questions. When you meet together, you can then watch the short video and do the exercises and questions together. Today, we're introducing the course, Emotional Resilience, Living with the Fruit of the Spirit. Now, over the decades of working with people, we have concluded that the heart of negative thinking habits and even addictions is an emotional issue. As the saying goes, we self-medicate to regulate our emotions. We are emotional creatures, aren't we? Our emotional thinking leads us to many beliefs, and these beliefs about ourselves and lives, they set patterns of thinking. Now, they're either true, mature beliefs, or they're immature misunderstandings, false beliefs about ourselves and life. Now, as a child, we can have false beliefs, can't we? There's a monster in the basement is a child's belief. However, as an adult, it would be immature and lead to false fears. Unchecked, these immature beliefs stay with us and are reapplied every time we come into a new life stage. We are adaptive creatures, and we can learn coping skills, but new stress comes with each decade of our adult life, and our negative beliefs react all over again to this new stress. You see, there's stress factors in each decade. In our adolescence, in our 20s, in our 30s, our 40s, our 50s, our 60s, and beyond. At each decade, you and I, we have issues that cause stress. There are new things to master, and just the time you think you've mastered them, then a new decade comes along with new challenges. Changes in our responsibilities. It may be schooling or jobs. They change over time. Each decade can bring new challenges and different kinds of stress. Working your way up a career path is one stress. Being underemployed is another. It can be in the family of origin. Living at home as an adult can cause stress. Leaving home with issues is another kind of stress. The aging of our parents or sibling issues all can create different kinds of stress in the different phases of life. Of course, there's family issues. Being single has its own kind of stress. A newlywed faces different challenges than someone who's been married a while and now is thinking of divorce. Life always throws new challenges. Having children is another kind of stress, and it varies from a toddler up to a teenager, each with new challenges. And of course, there's relational issues, making new friends, losing old ones through moving or death, loneliness, sexual tension. Different stages of life can place us in places where we have complicated relationships. We have to navigate new territory. And of course, there's body issues. There's body shaming at each decade. Lack of self-acceptance, health issues are different with each stage we go into. And then we've developed different coping mechanisms. And they can be wrong and lead us down a path. If you take immature beliefs about ourselves and life and add life stress, you can cause reactions in the form of fight, flight, which is escaping, or freeze. These reactions or urges can become more intense and become cravings. The stress produces an emotional agitation that cries out, I have to have it. It will help me escape this painful stress. And this stress can produce cravings, which lead to addictive behavior. The difference between a habit and a craving is the intensity of the urge. The more intense your urge or craving, the more you need time, skills, and help with your emotions. That's what this class is about. Once we succumb to the cravings, it can have a life of its own. It escalates and becomes addictive behavior. This is where denial comes in. We deny that anything is wrong, or we want to believe that we can master this thing called addiction or other habits all by ourselves. However, when it comes to emotional-driven addiction, you can't. You need help. You must be honest with yourself and be willing to do the work needed to become who you were meant to be. You need to study about it, go to meetings, get counseling. And I also believe you need spiritual help. And here's the point. You are worth it. Even though you may not believe it yet, you are worth all the time, money, and effort it will take to recover emotionally from your past. Whether or not you have addiction, if your past is bothering you, you need to recover. So what about our past? I started emotional resilience about 12 years ago. I concluded that childhood trauma and self-beliefs that resulted were a major player in the way that we lived emotionally as adults. I built a whole theory around what I called emotional relearning. Now, I'm not alone. There's a whole new movement of psychology.
There's a whole new movement
of psychology working in this area. This new emphasis on trauma is dealing with the emotions, memories, and body sensations. There have also been major studies done in the effect of adverse childhood experiences on children and later in their adult life. This landmark study is called ACE. The studies have classified in their studies 3 types of adverse childhood experiences. Now, what about our past? I started emotional resilience about 12 years ago. I concluded that childhood trauma and the self-beliefs that resulted were a major player in the way that we lived emotionally as adults. And I built a whole theory around what I call emotional relearning. Now, I'm not alone. There's a whole new movement of psychology working in this area. This new emphasis on trauma is dealing with the emotions, memories, and bodily sensations. There have also been major studies done in the effect of adverse childhood experiences on children and later in their adulthood. This landmark study is called ACE. The studies have classified 3 types of adverse childhood experiences. And this ACE study, it concluded that these 3 classifications caused all kinds of problems for children when they became older. Those 3 classifications are abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. Let's look at each. Abuse. Now that would include physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Neglect. That would be the neglect that results in physical and emotional harm. And then household dysfunction. This is where a child is exposed to a household suffering, perhaps with mental illness, or acting out, or a relative being incarcerated, or violence perpetrated on a family member, especially by a caregiver. Maybe it's substance abuse by a caregiver, or a family going through a divorce. Now everyone has a story. There are no perfect families. None of us goes unscathed. We all have areas that we need to mature in. However, just because you may have suffered through one or more adverse experiences that we're talking about doesn't mean you are destined to a life of suffering. Many people have bounced back from this kind of adversity. Many others learn to cope with life's difficulties. Our past does not have to define us. Let me say that again. Your past does not have to define you. There's hope today. This is where emotional resilience, living with the fruit of the Spirit, can help you. We know how to thrive in spite of our background. That is what emotional resilience is all about. We have the answer. It's all about emotional resilience, the ability to bounce back. Many of the emotional issues we suffer with is because we don't know how to regulate them, or better yet, get rid of the false predictions, the erroneous thoughts or lies that start them in the first place. We medicate to regulate our emotions. Instead, the fruit of the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. They offer the help needed to be resilient with almost every painful situation you can have. Now, in this program, we'll start with how the brain works. We will then look at how trauma affects our childhood. We'll look at what's called attachment theory. Then we'll study emotions and how to bounce back from painful ones. Even more important, we'll learn what caused these painful emotions in the first place. We'll look at the thoughts, the beliefs, and predictions that we have about ourselves. We will introduce you to the way that faith and the fruit of the Spirit can make a difference in your life. Now, emotional resilience is a process of maturity. It acknowledges that we may have had childhood adverse circumstances, but we are not defined by them. Emotional resilience is about finding those distorted beliefs about life and our own self that stunt our emotional growth and then redefine them. We have to learn to have self-compassion and increase our ability to bounce back from painful emotions. Now, here's the 12 principles that we built this program on. We have 12 principles of our emotional resilience living with the fruit of the Spirit. The first, I can return to love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, that's the fruit of the Spirit, from painful emotions. Number 2, there is hope. My strong emotions and cravings are the result of faulty thinking or wiring, emotional vertical, and conditioning. Number 3, knowing that these strong emotions and cravings are a false alarm. I can ride the wave of strong emotions. I can contain the cravings that I experience. Number 4, my past does not define me. Neither does my negative prediction of the future. Number 5, I am unconditionally loved by God. I am lovable, significant. I can be safe and secure. Number 6, I have emotion. I am not my emotion. Number 7, false emotional alarms are reactions to lies I believe about myself and its perceived consequences. Number 8, I can escape my negative self-beliefs and embrace the truth. I have nothing to fear. Number 9, I have a choice today. Number 10, things are the way they are for reasons, and if nothing changes, nothing changes. Number 11, this is a journey, not a quick fix. I will mature over time. Number 12, I can relax and be myself. There's no test today. Now, emotional resilience is broken into 3 phases. The first is emotional recognition. This is the ability to know when we are having emotional episodes. You see, emotions are sensations, and we'll start to know when it's happening. This is learning to listen to our body and senses and perceive when something is bothering us. This allows us to react to it instead of reacting because of it. The second is emotional regulation. This is building the capacity to return to peace and joy from these painful emotions, the ability to be who I am really instead of giving into emotional impulses. And the third is emotional relearning. This is where we take the lies that we have emotionally learned about ourselves and relearn the glorious truth emotionally. So why emotional resilience course? The Bible teaches that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. In the last 20 years, neuroscience has learned how that the brain and the memory work hand in hand, shaping behavior. An emotional resilience course uses biblical principles and applied neuroscience to help us learn to regulate our emotions. This course integrates the brain, emotions, and spirit, and teaches us resilience and how to regulate our emotions. With emotional resilience course, we can live the way God intended for us. So stick with it. Stay with this program. We believe that you have a choice in what you want to believe. And our goal is to present you with a Christian framework from which you can consider spiritual solutions to your own situation. We believe that the Bible teaches about a God that is present, loving, and active in our lives. not a God of our choice, but rather a God who chooses us. We believe Christianity is not a religion, as so many have turned it into, but a living, vibrant relationship with a God who loves us, made possible through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. We believe that He has given us an inspired Bible for us to meditate on and follow. It's a source of strength. And we believe that when we are born again, that God lives in us through His own Holy Spirit and helps us live with the fruit of the Spirit. Christian spirituality is a relationship with the true and living God and can make all the difference in our life. So I encourage you to look at the written lessons. It is more on the subject. Then this week, before the next lesson, listen to the audio. In the audio, I will add stories and illustrations that will make the topic even clearer. Learning comes from repetition, and learning with this three-way approach is proven to be effective. Now I pray that you stick with this program, that God will bless you as we learn together how to be more emotionally resilient.